All right, hi everyone. We're a couple of minutes late. That's okay. Welcome to Studio B here at Britton Marketing and Design Group. Welcome to those of you on YouTube and potentially Facebook Live. I'm not really sure where we're appearing at some of these.
We're on a tour.
We're on a tour.
We're on a tour. Mm-hmm.
We try to do a little bit cross-channel, yeah, we're a couple of minutes late, which is okay. I think it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So. We're Britton Marketing and Design Group. We're a creative agency. We do a lot of brand-centered content creation, lifestyle, marketing, color-trended goods, fashion, retail, all that good stuff. That's kind of what we do. Welcome to the second edition of the Content Exploration Sessions for 2017. Today we're going to talk a little bit about content strategy and some of the deliverables that we have from our core and our processes that we have. So a little bit of a peek behind our curtain. So we hope that these are little informative sessions and that you get some value out of them. So I'm Nick. I'm a content strategist here at Britton Marketing Design Group, and this is Dave. He is our digital strategist and analyst. He is also like a level 19 black belt in dad jokes. So
I also sometimes pretend I'm a GIF.
okay.
So
You're boomeranging. Okay, all right. So that's very interactive and dynamic right there.
see,
That's
you wouldn't
good
have
stuff.
known that I was not a GIF right there.
No, so that's good. So it's not good, Dave. It's not good. So last year, the content exploration sessions was all about content and the different aspects of content creation, planning, distribution, and so forth. This year, we're taking a slightly of a different approach to it. We're kind of chronicling a holistic process from ideation through basically from idea to analytics and all those steps in between. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about that. Some of those processes that go into the content strategy of the things that we do, the tasks, the deliverables, the processes, and so forth. So we thought we'd start kind of highlighting and talking a little bit about what content strategy really is. It's about people, it's about content, right? So the people component, we talk about workflows and governance and making sure that we have that aspect, internal aspect figured out. And then we talk about content, the section which is all about creating structured content that's really substantive. So it's very user experience centric. It's a practice that focuses on creating those good user experiences, scaling that approach, creating engaging content, and creating internal processes and workflows and things like that that is really efficient and optimizes everything that we do. So we're going to specifically talk about 9 different things today that at the core we do a lot of different things when it comes to a project, and obviously it all depends on the client. It depends on the scope of the project and so forth, the deliverables, the goals, objectives, but we wanted to highlight 9 different deliverables or processes that pretty much we always do no matter what the project is. And those are the creation of user identities, our custom messaging framework that we do, a core model session, the RACI model in governance, content style guides, content production, content creation processes and what that looks like, aggregation and curation strategy, channel-specific strategies, and then the cool part, which is the editorial calendar and so forth. So we're going to jump in and start talking a little bit about user identities. For us, right now, which our user identities have evolved a lot, but for right now, we create these user identities, and they include buyer personas, user stories, and user scenarios. And why do we create these, and how do we use them?
Why do we create them?
Yeah.
Well, for us, it gives us a guide through the whole process, a guide to our content creation. When it comes to our buyer personas, we're using third-party data to really support the arguments that we're making throughout the content. So we're doing research and we're trying to figure out who exactly we're talking to. What are our buyers, our consumers, our audience? When it comes to our user stories, we're creating that value proposition. Say I'm a 40-year-old mom that wants to make sure my kids are eating healthy so I can reduce my anxiety over potential health issues. And what user are you talking to with specifics, and what is it that can guide the content? And then when you're talking a user scenario, that part of the process is when you're really laying out an example. Instead of a 40-year-old mom, it's 40-year-old Jennifer, who is mom of 6-year-old Aiden, and she always goes to the grocery store and she can't decide which product she should buy because she's worried about her child's health issue. So you get into much more of an example with the user scenario.
Right on. So essentially what we're trying to do is we are trying to access primary and secondary data for that client, that project, whatever it might be, and merge that with a little bit of intuition as well, from that perspective, to create and to really figure out what is the contextual way that the user accesses whatever content we're going to be creating. And as we have kind of evolved and learned about our own user identities, we're now pulling more syndicated data, search data, and social data to inform some of these audience targeting mechanisms that we use. So one of the things too that the user identities do is they inform our content creation process, right? It's not necessarily just audience targeting, but it flows into audience messaging as well. So which we really love the part of creating really rich messaging for our audience, because again, when it all boils down to something, what we're trying to do is create messaging that resonates with whatever audience it is, right? So how do we tailor that content, and how do we create that messaging matrix, and what pieces do we take from the user identities into the messaging matrix and so forth?
So you take the different personas that you have, the people that you're targeting from a broad base, and the user stories, the people that maybe have more value. You pick those people out, and you match that up with the different pillars of the brand. In our example of grocery, a mom going to the grocery store, is it a brand that focuses on organic ingredients? Is that one of their messaging pillars? So you might take the user stories that match up best with that pillar of their product, and then you can decide which content should be directed at which audience, and the tone, and how much content should be created for that specific audience. Where's the opportunity, and what tone and message should be used?
Yeah, and with the messaging matrix, there's a lot of things that inform those, not just from the user identities, but brand DNA things, mission and vision, purpose statements, any type of core messaging that aligns with external messaging and internal messaging from that brand goes into that messaging matrix, so we can craft tailored towards different content themes, ratios, direction, and focus, and so forth. So and that messaging matrix then is used on a content creation basis, right? So it informs that whole process, which for us, we always look at a holistic messaging, but then we look at channel-specific messaging as well, and different tonality and things like that, depending on what tactic and what channel are we using, and what audience are we speaking to. So the messaging matrix is really helpful for us in our process, not just from, again, narrowing down on that audience and figuring out how to really speak to that audience on their specific platform of choice.
Right, and each channel works differently. So the audience that's on Facebook works different than the audience that's on Snapchat, works different than the audience that's on LinkedIn. The way that you speak to them is going to be differently. The way that you create content is going to be differently. There's different native features with each channel. Yeah. So each channel might have a similar purpose, or it might have separate purposes, and then you can take the nuances of each channel and make that work to your advantage, talking to each of those audiences and creating specific content that will work best on each channel. Right on.
So we've defined a little bit of the audience, a little bit on the messaging. So let's say we're creating web page content. Then one of the practices or workshops that we do here is a core model session. What the core model session allows us to do in a very structured and consistent format is that it allows us to create really actionable web pages that not only targets the user needs and tasks, but also funnels our business objectives into that experience from a content creation standpoint. Because a lot of times you have these segments of people, specialists doing different things. So the core model session will first, it will make sure that the page, that whatever we're working on is it needed. So it's kind of part of that content inventory, content audit part too, to vet to see if we really need this this page. But then it also gives a blueprint for that content creator to write not just engaging content, but also content that will convert a little bit more.
Right. It tells more of its purpose.
Yeah. So we're really into core model sessions. Whenever we do any website builds, we do them because then we have those same consistent inputs into every page that we create. So we know that we need to talk about the business objectives. We know we need to figure out what is the user task, what are the user going to do on this page. And then we also want to make sure that we know where do they come from? Is it from a social post? Is it from the home page? Was it through navigation? Is it from an ad? And then we define all the core elements on that specific page too. And then the icing on the cake is that a lot of times when especially in large scale projects, web projects, is that we create these pages, but then they don't necessarily have a conversion point. They're just informational, but there's no conversion point. So what the core model session allows you to do is that you do think about what are the forward paths. What do we want the user to do after he's consumed the content on that specific page? So what's the purpose there? So we talk about, well, do we want them to fill out the form? Do we want them to go to this specific page? So let's create a content or call out so that they go to the next page or so forth. So,
or go make a purchase.
Or it's a time to make a purchase. Exactly. So that's kind of what the core model session does for us. It really allows us to take a large scale approach to content creation and boil it down so that everyone's on the same page, and that we can create these on pages and content on a little bit of a larger scale. So next on the agenda is the RACI governance model, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. RACI stands for Responsible, Assigned, Consulted, and Informed. So one of the things here that we always try to make sure is that every project that we do is really efficient, and we don't incur any scope creep and things like that can happen. And what the RACI model really allows us to do, it allows us to really define those roles and responsibilities for everyone, so that when we work on a specific project, everyone knows exactly what they're responsible for, what they're assigned to do, and who's going to be consulted for that specific piece, and then who's going to be informed about that specific.
And when you've got a team of specialists, that helps to, inform who they need to talk to when they need information to complete their project, and what the workflow is going to be.
Yeah. And it's really, if for us, I think it's really beneficial because we're really integrated here. We take an integrated approach to everything that we do. So we have teams of teams that move in and out of different projects and so forth. So it's really important during those kickoff sessions to say, well, these are all the deliverables we have, and this is who is responsible for that deliverable, and who needs to consult on that, and so forth. So it's really something that we use to stay on track. So let's talk about content style guides. No content style guides are alike. There are some good ones out there that we always kind of keep tabs on, like MailChimp, that do a really good job from a digital perspective to not just show how they do it, but really to explain how they do it. Slack is another platform company that has a really cool messaging experience, and that's so tied to the core of what they're trying to achieve, which is really cool as well. So But what a content style guide is supposed to do, it's supposed to be the blueprint that everyone on that brand team needs to follow, right? They really ensure, consistency in anything that you do from a messaging standpoint.
Right. You take all of those pieces that we've discussed and compile them into one spot to go to.
Yeah, yeah. And we have, again, when you talk about a content style guide, you can have a lot of different type of things that go into said style guide. You can have those user identities, which is a must because you need to know who you're talking to. You put the messaging matrix in there so that you know how you should talk to the audiences that you've defined. But there's other things as well. There's your brand standards, your best practices, your DNAs, your glossary of your terms that you have to use, and so there's all those style specific branded terms and marks and all that good stuff that go into it as well, and your channel specific strategies and all that
Correct.
stuff.
Yeah.
We love content style guides. The one thing we don't love is that when people create them and then they don't use them. So make sure that they're actionable and accessible to everyone at your company that you're working with. So we have defined a couple of things. We've defined audiences, messaging, we have some roles and responsibilities, then we kind of get started into content creation and content production. From our point of view, the one thing that we always try to do is we try to define it and make it as we try to add clarity to the content creation process as well. So we do create flowcharts that chronicle every step for that specific tactic that we're creating, so that again we can apply that RACI model to that specific tactic. So when we are creating blog posts, we know that there's a step that is research. We know that there's a step that's writing. We know that there's a step that's proofing and vetting and editing and final edits, and then we get into programming and functional reviews and all that.
Well, when I'm writing, there's a couple of more proofing and rewrites, and then proofing and then rewrites again, and then probably some proofing again.
And some more proofing added on top of the proofing, so it's proofception. But the important part here is that make sure that you visualize your content production process, whether it's in a flowchart, PDF or graphic that you do, because it serves a lot of different purposes. One, it gives everyone the clarity to how many steps is involved in one different tactic. So they can see the scope of things, and we can see if there are things that are necessary, steps that we can take out or whatever it might be. But then you can also go further, and you can look at how long should it take for that specific tactic. How long should it take for you to research a 1,000-word blog? So then once we have that medium there, after we get a couple in our belt, we know exactly how long it takes on those different steps. So again, so that we can be more efficient, we can even be a little bit, we can go to market a little bit faster if we're talking about estimating something, because we have a track record of, hey, we know exactly how to perform this tactic and how long it would take and so forth. So,
and you can find out whether or not you have capacity to take on additional projects, and if you need, additional help.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, going from flowcharts for a specific tactic to using a content creation or production tool like Gather Content has made our process a little bit more scalable, because you have custom workflows that you create inside of Gather Content that, again, you don't have to necessarily recreate anything. You just use the platform to its advantage. So we're always proponent of using using tools and resources to your advantage. And we're going to be talking about tools and resources in the March session. So that was a nice plug, segue. Or
See how you did that.
Yeah. So that was,
I was waiting for the tree to do that at some point. It was to slip in the next month.
Segue.
So you beat him to it.
Yeah, Planty needs to be more proactive in his communication with this, I think. But all right, so next step, which isn't necessarily a next step in that order, but it's important for us to create an aggregation and curation strategy.
Right.
Because not all clients, not all projects, not all campaigns require solely original content.
Mm-hmm.
But we still need to find content. We need to find and vet community content that we can repost and reshare and things like that. So aggregation and curation, finding the content that might be applicable for our different audiences, that might not necessarily be branded from that brand that we're working with, and then organizing and finding channels where we can distribute that message is super important to have a strategy behind as well.
And using those tools from the messaging matrix or the user identities and finding out, earlier in the process, your guide as to who you should be talking to, you can then find other content not created by you that's still talking to that same audience.
Right, absolutely. So some of that audience targeting, the user identities, the messaging matrix, informs your strategy of aggregation and curation. So, and then that in turn informs other things, because we want to use curation very effectively and purposefully, because there's huge value in using channels that might not be as heavily trafficked as the primary and secondary behemoths in social. So there might be opportunities from a curation standpoint that is, kind of low-hanging fruit. Just doing something as repurposing your blog post on channels, or creating an RSS feed. That's a low-hanging fruit. Aggregate or curating your blog post on other platforms like Apple News, Medium, all these other networks that you can easily connect your content to, can be a really a really boost to your content, because you might have audiences that consume your content directly on your own platforms, but then there might be other audience and niches and segments that like your content, but they don't necessarily visit your own platform.
Right.
So,
it's an opportunity for discovery. It's an opportunity for additional engagement, and an opportunity to reach new audiences. And there's even an SEO opportunity in there as well for some platforms.
Right. Absolutely. So we have, now we're at the channel specific strategies part of this. And hey, how's it going? I'm going to turn that off. So when we talk about
It was the plant. He was telling you that next month.
He was a little late. He was a little late, but when it comes to those channel-specific strategies, again, we take a holistic approach. We create holistic goals and objectives. Then we segment our audience using user identities and data, and then we create messaging, and then we get into channel-specific strategies where we define what is the purpose of this tactic and channel, who's the audiences that we're speaking to, what's the hierarchy, how does that all factor into the whole process?
Well, we look at who's using what channels the most. Whereas when you're going through the earlier process of user identities, you might identify in the buyer personas what their use of technology is and what social channels they use the most. So here you can say, okay, we have this purpose and this audience, where which channel works best, for what we're trying to achieve. And each channel is going to be different. Each channel has different features, and each channel has a different cadence for publishing that makes sense to achieve those goals. So the audience is different on Facebook as for Snapchat. So if you define who you're specifically talking to on each channel, you might achieve engagement with one channel and an opportunity for clicking through to your blog on another channel, and each channel is going to have a different purpose.
So creating a specific purpose for each channel that you think is applicable. And we talk about owned, earned, and then there's also the paid aspect. So determining the paid strategies is equally as important as creating channel-specific strategies for your earned and owned. So from a paid perspective, if you're trying to reach kids age 16 through 19, maybe your best bet wouldn't be digital display ads, for instance. So you have to look at what is our paid media strategy going to look at, and how are we going to pull that syndicated data, the social and the search data, to inform the paid aspect of the campaign as well. So it gets fascinating, but it's really important that you, as a brand, have a specific strategy for each channel that you use. You have to have a purpose. You have to have a hierarchy or a priority for how to target the audiences as well, right? And then you custom tailor that messaging
Right.
towards using the proper tonality and things like that. And then there's the whole thing of how do you use that channel properly too.
Right.
It's the channel specific features that we have.
Yeah, and everything is, I mean, for some channels, it's very visual. For some channels, it could be audio. For some channels, it could be, a very professional piece of content. So it's very different. And if you define that, it's one less thing you have to figure out, and you can focus on just creating the content
Yeah.
and posting it, distributing it.
And that's where you are able to scale more appropriately because you've defined all these little nuances beforehand, so
Mhm.
that you're really empowering the content creator at that point to create that structured content so that we can then distribute on whatever channel it is, and it will be
Right.
the most effective. It will get the most reach because we're playing by the rules of that specific algorithm, because we are using their we're playing by their rules, using hashtags, for instance. There's different thresholds on different channels. So
Right.
Again, going with those channel specific native features is that you have to play by them. So if you don't, you're losing out on your organic reach, right? So
Absolutely.
That's what we don't want to happen. We want to make sure that everything that we create gets as much reach possible. That doesn't always have to be the main KPI, but the more people we reach, potential for converting might be even better, depending on what that KPI is, I guess. So, all right, so we've gone through the steps. We're ready to create a real actionable calendar. If we don't have a calendar, it's hard to say that we're creative, right, and strategic, because we don't necessarily factor in any planning.
Right.
So here at Britton, we kind of start at this level, which is we usually refer to them as dry period planning documents, which is annual stuff that is an omni-channel approach. Everything that's external and internal messaging from a brand is included in that main dry period planning. It's usually on an annual basis. Then you have the editorial calendar, which is a quarterly and a monthly calendar that is a little bit more granular, a little bit more actionable. And then we have our publishing schedule, which is weekly, and then even on a daily perspective. So you can't, everything is about planning. And if you don't necessarily have and employ a specific strategy and cadence and frequency for all the different channels that you're using to message, then you're probably not being consistent.
Mhm.
So when you're not consistent, it's hard to track what is really resonating. So there's just every marketer out there probably loves and hates talking about editorial calendars because they can be cumbersome, but they're so valuable. Right?
And in reality, it helps to make sure that you know that you're creating enough content, or maybe that you're creating too much content, and you can scale back and know you have exactly what you need, or that you could maybe work ahead because you know that you have this many blogs or this many pieces of content that are coming up next month. So when you have capacity, you can work ahead or stay on track.
And the other cool part of it is that when you have a really nice cadence with a calendar approach, is that you have more capacity for acting on those real-time opportunities because you
Right.
have this content engine that is thematic and you know what's going to happen next. So you have that ability to be more agile and jump on these opportunities in real time, which we talk about virality and Oreos and all that good stuff.
We do talk about Oreos.
Yeah. In a sense, we talk about Oreos from a marketing perspective and then from a belly perspective.
From a snack time perspective.
Yeah, so it's true. It's lunchtime.
I'm hungry now.
We should be not talking about Oreos, but anyway. All right, well, we've talked about user identities, messaging matrix, core model sessions, workshops. We've talked about the RACI. We've talked about content production workflow flowcharts. We've talked about content style guide, aggregation curation, channel specific strategies, and editorial calendars. So those are some of the main things, core things that go into our content strategies for every project that we really touch on. So hopefully it was a little bit of value to you. The next session, which will be the last Friday in March, plenty, don't. You can find, so the next session we'll talk about tools and resources, maybe gather content, maybe how to use Feedly to aggregate content, whatever that might be.
Right.
There will be tons of tools and resources that we'll talk about. So that's a cool
We
thing.
might not even be here. It might just be Planty.
And he will, at that point, he will be driven by machine learning and AI. So well, we'll see how that goes. We'll bow down to our overlord Planty by next month. But
Wow. That escalated quickly.
yeah, that escalated quickly. But you can find all of our previous sessions on our YouTube channel. Just look for Britton Marketing and Design Group. And then hopefully we will see you again the last Friday in March at noon. So have a great day. We'll see you soon.